This past month and a half has been a rough one for two big action movies. Big in the fact that they cost a lot of money, and big in just in scope and how they were filmed and what they kind of concentrated on. One is The Fall Guy, about a stuntman who tries to solve a crime, and there's a lot of stunts, a lot of big set pieces, a lot of action, but it failed to do anything at the box office. And the other was Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which I think, in my opinion, may have been a little bit too dark for audiences. But the studio should have been onto something, because the movie before this, Fury Road, which was just a phenomenal, maybe probably the best action film. I put that as maybe the number two or number three. Definitely behind Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's up there close. That was one of the best action films, technically, story wise, everything. And that didn't do that well. That made its money back, but barely. So I don't know what the studio was thinking. I'm glad they made the movie. It barely squeaked by. I'm not even sure if it broke even or not. But it's a shame, because this movie is definitely worth being made. The Fall Guy they could have done so much with, but it got me thinking, what are the most underrated action films that really didn't do anything at the box office, but they were worth being made, and they should have made their money back, and they should have been blockbusters. This is my top five list of action films that should have been big blockbusters, but for some reason the audience just did not go out to see them in the theater. And I'm going to do honorable mention only because I mentioned it before, but Mad Max Fury Road, one of the best action films behind Raiders of the Lost Ark ever. This should have been a big blockbuster, but I'm not going to include that on the list. So, number five, a classic, Midnight Run. This film just gets better with age. This film I could watch once a month. It makes me laugh. It stirs the emotions in me. It's got a lot of adventure, comedy, action, you name it. This did relatively well in the box office, but it didn't smash any records, and it kind of just stayed its releases and made its money and then disappeared. But I think it's got more of a cult following now that it's been over 20 years since it's been around, about almost 30 years. But this is a classic, and it should have been a blockbuster. Number four is Guy Ritchie's A Man from U.N.C.L.E. This is a remake from an IP of a television series from the 60s. And I didn't even think it was going to be that good, but I was pleasantly surprised when I saw it. This was a good action film, good rapport with the actors, just a great vibe, great. Guy Ritchie could be off and on, but he was definitely on this film. And everybody was just fantastic, and a great story. Hugh Grant is even, I think, just may have been one of the first roles that he had where he was kind of changed up and wasn't the regular, dapper, nice guy kind of role. He was a little edgy in this. This should have been a big hit too. And I think everybody thought I did too, that this wasn't going to be any good, but this was a pleasant surprise. Number three, Shane Black's The Nice Guys. They're taking the buddy cop movie, which was huge in the 80s and the 90s, in 2016, and trying to revigorate it, put a little electricity into it, bring it back. And for audiences, it just didn't hit. I think maybe they just made their money back. But these two guys, these are two great actors, Russell Crowe, Ryan Gosling. Together, they had chemistry. They were funny. The story was good. It was you had a lot of action. This was a good movie, and I'm not quite sure why people didn't go out to see it, or people just aren't interested in the buddy movie anymore, buddy cop movie. But this is definitely worth a shot and worth a revisit. Number two, John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. And I think a lot of people just didn't get this film at all. And I'm not sure why. It's basically a comedy, tongue-in-cheek action film taking place in Chinatown with Kurt Russell doing his best John Wayne and showing what a great, white lead character, what a buffoon he is. And everything he does, he tries to be the man, but he's just an imbecile. But it's hysterical to look at. And it just didn't do any kind of business, I think, when it came out. Maybe barely broke even, if anything. But it's funny, John Carpenter always has these films that he makes. He's ahead of the curve. Nobody really wants to see it, like The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China. I think The Fog was kind of, didn't make too much at the box office, but years later, they always come back as cult favorites. And this one too. I remember seeing this in the theater the first time, and I'm like, this is a classic. I love this film. This film is action packed, funny, in a mysterious place, Chinatown. I could still watch this film once a month easy without getting bored. This is a great film. And the number one action film that didn't do well in the box office, and I'll actually say for this one, it bombed in the box office, is The Last Action Hero. And when I tell you I saw this on the first day it came out, I loved it. I said, this is a great film, and I was so surprised that nobody else went to go see this. And I think a lot of people didn't even like this. And I think they didn't get it. You know, it's a movie that becomes reality. He pops out of the film and goes into real life. And I thought it was really, really well done. Arnold Schwarzenegger's on his game. This is directed by John McTiernan. He's on his game. This was just a fun, action-packed with a twist. You know, the action hero, he comes out of the film and has to deal with real life. And the things in real life just don't work the same as they did in the film. I thought it was a great premise. I think they pulled it off. And this should be revisited again. But this movie should have made a lot more money than it did.